Let me tell you something, Mean Gene, as today on the channel we're counting down my 5 favorite Mean Gene Okerlund figures of all time.
The spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Welcome everyone, Kyle here. Welcome back to the channel for another edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, a Thursday tradition here on the channel as we count down my top 5 or top 10 favorites of something. And today, Mean Gene gets called up as Mean Gene Okerlund, one of the greatest personalities in professional wrestling history, gets the Duke. And we're going to count down my top 5 Mean Gene figures of all time. And of course, we're going to start at number 5, work our way to number 1. I'll ask you guys in the comments, make sure you put your top 5 down there below. Of course, Mean Gene Okerlund, a favorite for many, including myself. I, of course, like a lot of people, remember him from the WWF, WWE time frame into WCW, but older collectors and others out there would remember him from his time in the AWA, good Midwest territory, of course. And one of my most fond Gene Okerlund memories is, of course, Mean Gene Okerlund's Pizza. He also had a hamburger chain out there, but of course the pizza chain was my favorite, being a pizza connoisseur out there. And I had it on quite a few occasions. So Mean Gene always holds a special place in my heart in the pizza variety time frame. But Mean Gene, a guy that's had quite a few figures over the years, going all the way back to the LJN days, all the way up to the current Mattel days, and all points in between. And he's got more figures, I think, than most people think of. So very cool. Mean Gene Okerlund, one of the greatest personalities of all time. It comes to us today in the top 5. I'm going to ask you guys again, make sure you put your list in the comments down below, as that is part of the fun part of all this. And I will say, in this one, we're going to do a little bonus one. This didn't make the top 5 as it's not a true figure, but this is a custom I have in my collection. And some people call me the greatest customizer of a generation. I don't know, maybe I just made that up right now. But this is a custom I made way back in the day. Of course, if you remember Mean Gene Okerlund, him and Hulk Hogan tagged up way back when. And this is my wrestling gear Mean Gene Okerlund. I always thought this one's cool. This one always makes me smile. It was an easy custom to it at the time with an extra flashback head. But very cool. You guys know I love a good easy custom. So this is a honorable mention in my collection of a Mean Gene figure I really enjoy, but it's not an official one, so it's not in the traditional top 5 list. But speaking of that top 5 list, let's get into it. Let's kick it off at number 5. All right, we kick off the top 5 Mean Gene Okerlund figures of all time at number 5. And number 5 comes from my favorite wrestling toy line of all time. You longtime viewers know what I'm talking about. We're talking about Jakks Classic Superstars, and we're going all the way back to Jakks Classic Superstars Series 14 for Mean Gene Okerlund in his very iconic black suit, of course. Got his red bow tie going on. Just a good representation of Mean Gene Okerlund. And this was his first figure after a long absence of not having figures. So it was really fun to get this Gene Okerlund at the time. Definitely fits in the Classic Superstars line. Definitely one of the top, gosh, he could be the top 1 or 2 interview men of all time. Obviously, he did some announcing, especially in the AWA, a little bit into WWF, but mostly known as a ring interviewee, backstage interview guy. And I would say probably the greatest of all time as far as that, a guy that was just a standalone interviewee like this. Mean Gene holds a special place in a lot of our hearts. But this Gene, of course, looks like Gene Okerlund. A little bit younger version, I always thought of this one as more of a younger version, a little bit more fuller in the face, a little bit darker in the hair. A very, very good one. Now, of course, a lot of people say, oh, it's Jakks. He's too tall. Yes, he is too tall. Yes, it's a lot of reuse. It's a very easy figure to produce because, guess what? It's just the Jakks suited body with a bow tie. Not too much different than the Howard Finkel we got in the Classic Superstars line. But still a special figure, still a really cool one from the Series 14 Jakks Classic Superstars line. My biggest gripe for this figure isn't anything about the figure. It is about the sticky disease. Of course, the Jakks sticky disease. And this is one of the all-time worst ones from the Classic Superstars. You can put this one, Brother Love, and a couple few in that history there of guys that have really struggled with the sticky disease. This one is very sticky and always is. I get the plastic tape on it, rinse and repeat, remove, gets rid of it, but it comes back in like a week. So I don't know what it is on Mean Gene and guys like Brother Love that's even stronger than some of the others, but that is one of the curses this Gene Okerlund figure has. But very cool. Jakks Classic Superstars Series 14, Mean Gene Okerlund coming in at number 5. All right, next up, coming in at number 4 in our top 5 Mean Gene Okerlund countdown. Number 4 is his latest action figure release. Of course, it is a Build-A-Figure. It is Mattel Elite WrestleMania 2023 wave. Of course, that has Dusty Rhodes, the Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, and The Rock, a heavy hitter lineup. Check out those reviews on the channel. But if you buy all those figures, you can build your own Mean Gene Okerlund. And this figure, very similar to number 5, basically the same kind of thing going on, even down to the hand gestures. But this is definitely Mean Gene Okerlund. Very cool. A lot of people did miss out on the last version of Mattel Mean Gene Okerlund. It was a flashback Walmart exclusive. So to get Mean Gene back out there with a little bit of the smoke and mirrors, a little bit of differences, I thought was a really nice touch here. So Mean Gene Build-A-Figure, very cool. Once again, much like the Jakks, very kind of paint by numbers. We're used to these Build-A-Figures, the same body, a lot of reuse going on. Getting a different head though with Mean Gene here. Of course, getting his iconic throwback microphone, I guess they use in the Mattel Elite line. Just a very cool representation, and I always love the Build-A-Figures because Build-A-Figures, I always feel like I'm getting a free figure. So I felt like I bought those 4 figures, I got a free Mean Gene. That's how I justify it in my head at least. But very, very good Mean Gene Okerlund. I'm sure a lot of collectors watching this right now that are currently into the game have this one, or on the search of this one, and will have this one. And this will be probably one of the most popular Mean Gene Okerlunds for a lot of people. Got to think it's going to be on most people's top 5 list. But there it is, the latest WrestleMania Elite Build-A-Figure, Mean Gene Okerlund, coming in at number 4. All right, we're at the halfway point. We're at the number 3 spot in our countdown. Make sure you put your list in the comments down below, and we've made it this far. You might as well thumbs up the video. You guys know that helps the channel. Might as well get that over with right now. But coming in at number 3 in our Mean Gene Okerlund countdown is a little bit of a curveball, something we don't see in my list really ever. But coming in at number 3, we're going back to the WCW days. We're going to WCW Toy Biz. We're going to the Ring Announcer Series, and of course, box set that came with Kevin Nash, Goldberg, and this Mean Gene Okerlund. Now, I am not a fan of the Toy Biz figures. I'm just not. When they came out, that was a little bit of a dark time for me in my wrestling figure fandom. The TTLs, the R3s, the Toy Biz. I just wasn't enjoying really any wrestling figures that were on the market at the time. However, this Mean Gene always stole my heart and never let go way back when. Now, Mean Gene didn't have to have all the articulation, the bells and whistles. He is an announcer. He is an interviewee, or an interviewer, I should say. So this one really worked, and this thing is spot on. This is WCW Gene Okerlund all day long and twice on Sunday. Looks just like him, even down to the expression, that kind of inquisitive look. You can just see him interviewing Ric Flair in the ring, and Ric Flair stripping his clothes off and dropping elbows on his pants. You can just see that with this Mean Gene. Just very cool. Of course, you get the WCW microphone that is removable on this one. A little bit of articulation, but not a ton. You get the legs back and forth, no waist going on, head back and forth. You get the shoulders that go around, and then you get a little arm movement. And he's got the finger point, like he's pointing to the crowd, pointing to the audience. Just a very cool Mean Gene and a sleeper Mean Gene, and one a lot of people have probably forgot about. Now, of course, like a lot of toy companies, Toy Biz said, we got to get the most out of their molds. I believe they released this maybe in another pack. I know for sure there was a ring pack that had this Mean Gene, but I think he had maybe a blue or a black tie instead of red. So a simple little color change, get the most out of your molds. But a very cool interview figure of Mean Gene. Fits good with a lot of different figures. Of course, Mean Gene wasn't a giant by any means, so you can really mix this one in with a little of those smoke and mirrors to almost any toy line you want to. Your Bone Crunchers, for example. Just a really good representation and something we don't see very often in these top 5 lists. A little WCW Toy Biz Mean Gene coming in at number 3. All right, we're getting down to the wire. We're at the number 2 spot, and our number 2 Mean Gene Okerlund figure of all time comes once again from Mattel. We go all the way back to Mattel Walmart exclusive flashback series for Mean Gene Okerlund. Now, all right, we're getting near the end. We're at the number 2 spot, and the number 2 spot in our Gene Okerlund countdown once again comes from Mattel, and this time we go all the way back to Walmart. Oh, let's take a trip to Walmart for the flashback wave, Mean Gene Okerlund. A very iconic looking Mean Gene. A lot of people think of him in all the black, but a lot of times when I think of Mean Gene, this is really what I think of most of the time, because I always remember Mean Gene most. I remember every Sunday watching All-American Wrestling. I know he was by himself sometimes. Hillbilly Jim would join him. It was kind of a C-level show, I guess we'd call it that, but I always enjoyed it. It was always a Sunday tradition for me, and this is what I always kind of remembered Mean Gene wearing, kind of outfits like this, especially the tan pants. He was known to be in black a lot, but he did mix it up and put on some tan. Of course, going back to his AWA days, he wore a lot of tan pants as well, so Mean Gene, a fashion icon, as we all know in the pants department. But this flashback figure is really cool. First of all, being Mean Gene's first figure with the Mattel, that's pretty cool in itself to get Mean Gene at the time. Of course, you get the microphone, you get the suited body, all the bells and whistles there. But this was truly a 2-in-1 Mean Gene, and it's one of my big regrets of collecting Mattels, as I got this on my short list of things to pick up. I need another version of this Mean Gene because I need to display him in his red coat, as he comes with an extra set of arms and an extra coat, so you can have him in his red coat instead of this bluish coat. I think that's really cool, a 2-in-1. Give him more of his AWA red color going on. Just a really cool version of Mean Gene. And just because of that nature, the 2-in-1 aspect here, that one puts this above the latest WrestleMania 2023 release in my mind and in my countdown. But a very cool one, this Mean Gene. Flashback, Walmart exclusive, Mean Gene Okerlund, coming in at number 2. All right, the time has come. We're at the number 1 spot in our Mean Gene Okerlund countdown. Make sure you put your list in order in the comments down below. And of course, like this video, as I said earlier. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the old notification bell. As you guys know, we got videos every single day and then some. But let's kick it off at number 1 right here. What is the number 1 Mean Gene Okerlund figure of all time as voted by me? Well, it was pretty easy. As you guys know, I always sleep on these things. I put my order out there, I give it a day or two, and then I come back to see if anything's really changed, and this didn't change. And when I do close my eyes, as I do every night when I go to sleep, of course, probably you guys do too, when I think of Mean Gene Okerlund, I say, okay, what is it going to be? And this one kept coming up, and it stayed up. This one, of course, my first ever Mean Gene Okerlund figure, from LJN Series 3, Mean Gene Okerlund. Is there more defining action figure of somebody? Yeah, there is. But for Mean Gene Okerlund, I think this is the defining Mean Gene for most people. Very cool look, very iconic Mean Gene of the I don't give a you-know-what look here off to the side. Mean Gene, quite the character, and it was put in action figure form in this LJN. Now, this LJN was never first at the tops of my list. It was funny as a kid going by, buying my LJNs. Of course, we'd go to the store, and, I'd get one on a Friday after school or whatever. We'd go, okay, Kyle, you can get one figure. What do you want to get? And, of course, I'd always get the wrestlers. But sometimes you'd go there, and they wouldn't have any wrestlers, or they'd have wrestlers you already have. Well, I still needed to get a figure. That's where the managers, that's where Mean Gene came in, and Mean Gene was one of my earlier pickups I remember as a kid. And it worked. Mean Gene, of course, could interview, set the stage, do things, ring announce. He was a multi-tool player. He was like a young Ozzie Guillen. Wasn't Ozzie Guillen multiplayer? Or we'll just call him a Pete Rose, a manager coach, something like that. Oh no, Jose Oquendo. That's what I was thinking of. I think that's what I'm thinking. Cardinal, great. He played every position. I think that's what it was. But anyways, Mean Gene Okerlund was a great one to have as a little kid. Obviously, I would have rather had, a Roddy Piper or something like that. But when you couldn't get Roddy Piper, Mean Gene would fit that slot on a Friday night. You'd have him take some bumps. He'd get moved around. He'd do his interviews. He'd have the Hulkster there. He'd have whoever it could be. Just very, very iconic. And it was always cool that he was a little bit of a smaller figure. As, the wrestlers were larger than life, and he's kind of, it portrayed that in action figure form. They were so much bigger than him, and it worked for me. Talked about the pose on this. Very iconic. A lot of us remember this Mean Gene pose. Now, there is a variant. There is WWF microphone. There is blank microphone if you want to get really down to the nitty-gritty on this one. But very iconic Mean Gene. Once again, it is all black attire. Very similar to the classic Superstars. Very similar to the Mattel one we just recently got in the Build-A-Figure line. Just a very iconic LJN figure of Mean Gene Okerlund. And like I said, this one for me is because of my age bracket from when I grew up, when I was picking this up, so it is very iconic to me. But that Toy Biz, for example, if you were a kid growing up, maybe that Toy Biz is number 1 for you. Who knows? It's just everybody has their own list. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong, as we always say. So there it is. My number 1 Mean Gene Okerlund figure of all time is, of course, Series 3, the LJN. And make sure you put your list in the comments down below. Don't forget about the Patreon channel, link in the description below once again, where you can get early access to videos like this, bonus content, exclusive content, Q&As, you name it. And best of all, you do support the channel. You can also support the channel over at ProWrestlingTees.com. Search Kyle Peterson. And don't forget to hit me up on social media. SirPaul64 is where you're going to find me on Twitter, Instagram, _Kyle_Peterson. So for the top 5 Mean Gene Okerlund figures of all time, I am Kyle. See you guys all real soon.